So just so that everyone on stage knows, how many of you saw this for the first time? So you've got a lot of first-time viewers experiencing that final episode, so we can give them a second to decompress. So thank you all very much for coming. I figured that we could start, as we have been, with the beginning, and a little bit about how this project was first described to you and how you each got involved from the outset.
I started from the very beginning with David, who spoke to me about Twin Peaks, and he was doing something for television, and he wanted me to play the role of Dale Cooper, and then Mark Frost, he was also co-writing, and Mark, I had not met Mark, so I went to lunch with Mark. I think it was at the Border Grill. We went and had lunch together, and Mark said, okay, and he thought he had a positive thing, and but there was always the question, because I was 30, and I looked like a kid. I mean, was I old enough to, be this FBI guy? And I think that was one of the concerns. But David was my champion, and so that's how it started.
Julie, how early in the process did you begin working with David and Angelo?
Angelo, I started working with, my first job was in the East Village as an actress, as a singer, an actress, a chorus girl for the worst musical I've ever been in my life. But not the music, it was kick-ass music, and this guy, I thought, you are something. And he noticed that I'm a belter, a Broadway belter, and he noticed that, I had something out of all the big stars that were there. And I got involved early with him after that thing crumbled. He called me up and needed an angelic singer for Blue Velvet. So the belter became the ethereal one. I met David a year later, picked up the phone. Warner Brothers asked, do you want a contract? So weird to me. It's not the path I was going, but it's how it works. If you're available, you grab the ring. And meeting David was quite an experience because he's so down to earth, and I'm from Iowa. And we just hit it off really well. And working on Floating into the Night. And we were about halfway through it, I think. And then he had me read the script for Northwest Passage. You remember that?
That was the original title.
Yeah, it was a working title or something. And but Floating into the Night was a work unto its own. The music, obviously, got into David's head. That's how he wanted it. And of course, Angelo and him worked so well together. Although Angelo and I did record the song Mysteries of Love by ourselves, and then I met David a year later. So that's pretty much how it came to be. There's a lot in between, but it's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, I hear about the making of the music and everything.
It was fun. It was all about lunch.
Was David there a lot? Did he conduct stuff? Was he there all the time?
Absolutely. Yes. He couldn't hum a note. I go, come on, David. Come on. What do you mean? It just, and he just was too shy, too afraid to do it. But Angelo, he has a way about him, I guess you've seen it, that he can describe, like, to a saxophonist that was coming in, a session player, a real cat. We had some pretty hot guys older guys on the CD that were real cats, real jazz, Montreux jazz scene cats from Angelo's days. And they came in and David wanted something, and he said, big chunks of plastic. Al knew exactly what he wanted. So it thus became the wow, 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 wow in Rockin' Back Inside Your Heart. That's how it happens.
I'll ask you more. My story is I was cast by Johanna Ray in 1983 in a movie called Dreamscape. And sort of come back now that Inception came around, and people are looking at that again. But and I'd met her after that for something in New York. She just came by herself to New York and looked at actors there for something in Blue Velvet. But that there was nothing available in that, and I was working in the movie The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, playing an obsessed fan, and thank you. And for that, I was reading a lot of the great critic and social commentator Greil Marcus. I don't know if you know that guy. He wrote a wonderful book, Mystery Train and Lipstick Traces. And somehow it inspired me to go to this art show in New York, preparing for this obsessed fan by an artist named Joni May, who's from Athens, Georgia, and she came up around the same time as REM and the B-52s and those folks. But she's a fine artist, studied in Rome and everything else. Still lives in Athens, Georgia. And she had a show at the OK Harris Gallery. OK Harris just died not too long ago, but he was a great guy that brought out a lot of the pop artists, Andy Warhol and all these folks had their first shows at OK Harris. And Joni was there, and she had this amazing room full of suitcase shrines to country and western stars, and most of all, Elvis Presley. And little suitcase shrines, all these different things with different paraphernalia in it. And I said, that's it. I gotta contact her and see if she'll make me a prop for this obsessed fan. So she did, and she sent it to my hotel room. And I was supposed to be following this pop group around. And well, you know, I opened it up at my hotel. It was a little suitcase, red suitcase, had twinkling lights, and all this women's paraphernalia. It looked like your grandmother's jewelry box, or you folks, your great-great-grandmother's jewelry box. And it was velvet, and it had all these twinkling lights in it, and I hope this doesn't gross you out, because Joni sent it to me. This was her inspiration. She had, in the middle of it, was a fresh Stay Free maxi pack. Right in the middle, because this is supposed to be a shrine to all women. Now, as I was making this movie in LA, I got the meeting with Joanna to meet David. And this was for Wild at Heart. And I brought this suitcase shrine, and I did this character who had like a sloping eye. You can't see it, sloping eye, and a funny way of talking. And I did a whole thing about the character for David, and showed him this suitcase. And he really was taken with this suitcase, and said, you know, he had a few corrections. It was like I was in art school, and he said, you should do a few more things like this, and but I went away, and he wrote me into Wild at Heart, and then while we were doing Wild at Heart, he said he was doing this thing on TV, and would I be interested in this, and at first I wasn't. I wanted to stay away from television. And he said, you got to do this, Dave. It's going to be something really special. And Nick Cage and Laura Dern, we were sitting at lunch one day, and he said, you got to do this. You know, they convinced me to do it. And, you know, strange as it sounds that I was hesitant about doing this, you know, because the script was amazing to read. That the baguette thing the first time was really quite amazing. It came right off the page, and so I said, well, yeah, this is for me, and that's how I got involved.
The Baguette and Brie entrance, I think, over the course of the retrospective is one of the biggest laughs we got. Right? So, Kyle, can you tell us a bit about some of the decisions that you made early on about what you wanted this character to be?
So much of the character was on the page. I always say that introductory speech that I have, Driving Up the Mountain, is maybe the best introduction. Certainly the best I've ever had into anything, film or television, or theater for that matter. It says so much about the character so immediately. And I have a lot of the qualities of Cooper. There's similarity. I'm very fastidious, you know. I like donuts, maybe not quite as obsessively as Cooper, but certainly coffee. Those who follow me on Twitter know I send out tweets every now and then, drinking coffee at unusual places, and so I'm not sure. It's whenever the mood strikes. So coffee is also important, but the tangents that Cooper would run off on seemed very real and natural to me, and David really was a model in so much of it. Just watching him work, some mannerisms, particularly like when he puts his hands like this. That's totally David. When I'm asking him what kind of trees, when I'm asking Ankin, what kind of trees these are. And just those kind of obsessive things. The so much of it was there on the page. David was instrumental in flattening my hair on my head and bringing out that Elvis look, which each episode I slowly tried to just lift to the lip, and then he'd come back to direct it. It would just you'd get so scared, it would just flatten right back down to my head. And the suit and everything, but it was, a lot of it was on the page.
What exactly is it that you've got going on in your hair in bed?
That was a kind of a weird, so much, working with David, one of the beauties of it, I think everyone can attest, is that the accidents, the unexpected, he really embraces. So in that instance, he was like, I think my hair was kind of crazy one day, and he just said, "Oh, we got to have that when I wake up." So they spent a lot of time working to get that piece in spring, and then making it stand up, and just making sure that would be there for that moment. And he just loved that. Cooper askew, and he loved that thing. So that was an accident that we incorporated, as was he's spoken about the flickering lights in the pilot. Which were actually flickering on the day, and they just said, well, we'll just make that part of it. As well as the hospital guy who, when I asked him something, he responds with Jim, thinking he heard me ask him what his name was. And then it was so perfect when I think it was in rehearsal or something, very difficult to replicate when we actually did the scene, but it's that kind of happy accidents that he just loves this, and it's so rare. It happens in improv occasionally, but so rare to have it encouraged, I think, in the work. But David really embraces it, which is part of a lot of the great fun of working with him, because you're always kind of on your toes.